melkesjokoladefavorittene. Nå i 100 gram størrelse. 30 grader er nok for et perfekt resultat. Electrolux.
Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Unprecedented increase. That's exactly the words that I would use to describe what Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, has stated in their proposal for the increase in the European defense expenditure. Some time ago, Ursula has stated that we will have an increase in defense spending in Europe, but the numbers that were floating back then were not very encouraging, and I critiqued it a little bit on this channel as well, because what was discussed was about 300 to 500 billion increase over a period of 5 to 10 years. And obviously I stated that it's too long, it's too little, it's just not good enough. Now with the number that we know that it's going to be 800 billion over the period of 4 years increase, this is a game changer for the European Union. This will fundamentally change the structure and the attitude and defense capabilities that European Union has. Because if you look closely to what European Union can do now, then you will see the current European Union defense budget is only 326 billion euros. So it's more than double, like it's almost tripling the EU defense expenditure. Insane amounts. It's really good news. It's a good news for the world, it's good news for Ukraine, and it's good news basically for everyone, to be honest. Every democratic country, everyone should be very happy about this, especially in the light of what Trump's administration has done by suspending all weapon flows to Ukraine, including the new weapon flows, all the signed and agreed upon contracts. Everything has been put on hold because of his temper tantrum about Zelensky. Now, I will not be covering that a lot. We will touch upon Trump a little bit at a later time, but you know why my position, because every time people start talking about Trump and everything, then it just sucks all of the oxygen. And my position is we need to discuss the things that are actually mattering rather than already not talking about Trump, because as soon as he says like I'm not going to be supplying weapons to Ukraine, well, to be honest, he kind of excluded himself from the equation that is relevant for Ukraine. Now, obviously, the politicians will continue playing this game with Donald Trump and his administration. They will try to find some kind of leeway, because if Trump will allows for the weapons to flow from the United States, or allows the possibility for European Union to purchase weapons from the United States, which I know a lot of you are against, and myself included, I think the investment needs to be done in the European Union to strengthen our own production. But generally speaking, it's quite understandable that politicians will try to butter him up, especially with Keir Starmer. So don't be surprised that you will see some of the statements later on. But more importantly, if we're talking about immediate necessities of Ukraine, then you will be happy to know that over 90% of military aid that was already pledged to Ukraine by the Presidential Drawdown Authority of Joe Biden, not the newly developed, no newly made weapons, but the weapons that were supposed to come from the US stockpiles, 90% of those that have been signed by Biden have already been delivered to Ukraine. So they are already there. But the main question on everyone's mind is whether or not Europe and other allies will be able to substitute what US has been doing. And to talk about it, I'm going to turn to this garbage media, the BBC, that made this atrocious debunking, spending charts debunking. I'm not going to show you the show. If you know what I'm talking, good for you. But they talk that it's like it's almost impossible for Europe and allies to substitute, because they drew a circle and then divided the circle in half and said, look, US has provided 49% of all contributions to Ukraine. Therefore, all of the allies would need to double their contributions to Ukraine. And the obvious flaw in this is that this is a manipulation of numbers. What we need to look at here is the 67 billion. Now, it's a disputed number, but it's close enough about what US has supplied in weapons to Ukraine. Firstly, 67 billion, that is over 3 years that US has supplied. So if you take 67 billion and divide it by 3, then you easily get 22.33 billion. That's what needs to be additionally supplied by Europe and allies per year. That's it, 22.33. not 60 billion, it's not 175 billion, and so on. 22.3 is a manageable number. Remember, the EU budget is 326 billion. The European Union itself is looking to increase about 200 billions per year in the coming 4 years defense expenditure. And besides, we're not talking only about EU. For example, Norway rethinks how they are contributing to Ukraine. They're looking at their buddies around the Nordics that Denmark and Sweden have contributed altogether already over 8 billion euros help. And they are actually considering right now to step up. They're stating, since we have been contributing so far an approved contribution of 3.35 billion, why don't we talk a little bit more? And apparently the agreement that is now being drafted, that they would additionally get 8.5 billion in additional aid, pushing the total Norway's contribution closer to 12 billion euros, which is over $12 billion. Obviously, Europe is a little bit more expensive than the dollar. But then there is also Germany. Germany is now getting a new government, and well, it's not going so good apparently. Well, we've heard that Friedrich Merz has been proposing that potentially they could increase the defense spending with an emergency fund in Germany for 200 billion euros. So additional 200 billion specifically for Germany. And the talks didn't go that well. Like there was already some pushback from the Social Democrats. And yeah, as you see, like articles like these appeared, like that it's going to be a hard fight, an uphill battle for Merz to try to get something approved. And what would you do in this kind of situation? Because Germany did very simple thing. They increased this contribution not to from 200 billion to 500 billion, included some infrastructure investment, and now Germany is considering 500 billion euro investment into infrastructure and defense. There we go, deal is on the table. So instead they proposed this massive increase into the German infrastructure and defense, completely revamping the whole thing. I think that's a great solution if you ask me, and this just shows us again, if we go to this bullshit analysis, that remember, we only need $22.33 billion to cover what US will be not delivering. But the people that can think one step further will definitely ask me question, Georgie, but money by itself does not really help Ukraine. They would need actual weapons and vehicles. It will take years for this money to be transferred into the actual production. How can Ukraine go without it? Well, my imaginary question asking friend, if only there would be a country in Europe that has incredible capacity to produce weapons and has been 20-fold increasing year by year their defense industry. Ukrainian defense industry at this moment, what is being reported, is loaded for only about a third of their current capabilities. We're not even talking additional increase. We're just talking about the fact that Ukrainian state is not able to supply more contracts than just for the third of the potential industry that Ukraine already has. There is possibilities for Ukraine to produce much more. So if there is an increase in the requests for weapons productions, Ukraine itself can deliver a lot, while also the factories are being built both outside Ukraine and inside Ukraine. And while I thoroughly approve the increase for spending inside of the European Union, I think that defense spending and building up our defense industries is not enough for us to go forward. The crisis we find ourselves in is a lot more multifaceted. And one of the important part of the defense and security is political security and information security. So right now, Hungary is blocking another new EU security plan for Ukraine, increasing their expenditure for defense for Ukraine from 60 billion to over 80 billion, just by the EU itself, the whole thing, not individual countries. And this is the question that the European Union needs to answer. What do we do if we have politically sabotaging actors acting as basically disruptors? Can we really put the security of the countries and people within those countries because there is one or two or three or something rogue actors. Can we really do this? So there needs to be a political decision, and this is something that I'm hoping European Union will address relatively soon. Beyond that, another part that I'm going to show this article, but this has been ongoing so far. Right now, there's a lot of speculation of the upcoming peace deal. There is no peace deal on the table. So all of these discussions about, oh, Europe is prepared to send peacekeepers to Ukraine, or European allies are prepared to engage the 200 billion Russian frozen assets. If you read the fine print, you actually realize that all of this is being talked about, that, oh my God, if there is a ceasefire and then there is Russia is breaking that ceasefire, then they will confiscate these assets. It's idiotic. Like, there is no reason to wait until Russia breaks the ceasefire to start implementing the defense procedures. So I don't understand this narrative. I don't understand why it exists. I think we need to be more active and more proactive and more concrete when we're going against any kind of Russian actions. We don't need to put another activity in the long box. We need to act now. And if we're talking politics, then the obvious question is, what's between the United States and Ukraine? And right now there is a message stated by Zelensky that's being twisted and turned, that he's supposedly already ready to completely submit to Trump. And I just wanted to make sure that I show you what he stated, and I want to make sure that I explain what he stated in some of his other messages. So first and foremost, Zelensky, in his message, he's been explaining that they are indeed looking for peace, but Ukraine has been looking for peace from day one. So they're trying to fight some of these narratives that Zelensky is this active war desirer, so to say, that he really wants just war. And I'm really happy that Zelensky is pushing against it. Now, he's not saying sorry because there is nothing to say sorry for in that meeting, but I approve totally for the fact that they're trying to approach Trump. Now, they're talking about that there should be some goodwill from Russia, that Russia should exchange prisoners, that they should ban the missile strikes on the infrastructure both ways, and they're talking about the reintroduction of the minerals deal. And I want to talk about minerals deal. I skipped it because we were talking about the debacle within the Oval Office. So the current minerals deals on the table has been severely diluted. The initial minerals deal was essentially extortion document against Ukraine, basically stating that Ukraine will be forced into this economic extortion where it will just give resources away to US for basically nothing. Zelensky team has worked very actively to fight against these narratives, and they prepared a more rounded version that would be just a kind of like a goodwill memorandum document stating that United States would be definitely considering investing into Ukraine, and Ukraine would be contributing to this, yada yada. They would benefit all from investing into Ukrainian resources. It was a great piece of paper for Trump to essentially flail around and state that it's a good document. You see, I'm getting US money back, despite the fact that there is nothing in that document. It's a pure framework agreement. There is no concrete things in that document that would state that Ukraine is responsible for something or US is getting something they don't deserve. It's a purely framework agreement that would be available to build some kind of other agreements, more concrete agreements on. And talking about President Zelensky, talking about what he wants, he more clearly explained it in his statement to the Ukrainian society, speaking in Ukrainian. And he talked about certain things. He talked about that he is looking for mutually respectful partnership with United States, that obviously no one wants endless wars, especially Ukrainians. He says that these relationships needs to be built on mutual respects. Ukrainians have fought and earned the mutual respects, and he will be asking that there is mutual respect between the United States and Ukrainians. And more importantly, at the end of the video, he stated that no matter what the Russian demands are, like they will ask for giving them land, they will ask to reducing their army capabilities, all of those things that was proposed in the Istanbul capitulation agreement that Russia put on the table, and that now Trump's team is using as a essentially framework to go about securing peace, if I can say quotes like this, to Ukraine. Zelensky says they will get nothing. The only thing Ukrainians are interested and Ukraine is interested is a just peace. It translated here in this video, auto translation, as worthy, but what he meant is a just peace for Ukrainians. So no, guys, Zelensky isn't depressed or broken or is supposed to be going out soon. No, he's standing strong as a proper leader and the president of Ukraine, and he's standing strong in his beliefs that the only peace that Ukraine wants is the just peace. And the only kind of negative that I have, and my heart bleeds obviously for this, is that there is a propaganda machine right now working overtime against Ukraine, that Zelensky is so bad, that Ukrainians were never our allies, and so on. The whole Trump's mask administration, and it's unfortunate. Like, I already see the tides turning. I already see more and more people stating that Ukraine is just the worst part. I'm expecting soon more and more Republicans starting telling me that it was Ukraine that invaded Russia. Well, the only good things, if you want to pull something good for this, is that, let's take this for example. So this is Lindsey Graham, like one of the Republicans, and he was stating, he was like, well, Zelensky is about to get out of being a leader of Ukraine, to only follow up next day saying, well, better days are ahead, once they saw this Zelensky statement that he did over here. So the good news is that as the same way that it's been built, this narrative, if there is a turn of events, it can be easily kind of countered again, because that's how cults work. They don't really care about truths. They care only about what's the current narrative. Russia is always pushing this narrative that everyone needs to acknowledge the realities on the ground. Well, I propose we look at the ground and see what's exactly happening there. Because, for example, around Pokrovsk, the Russian main axis of attack, well, these blue areas, that's Ukrainian counterattacks. Not only Russia is not able to advance already for some time around Pokrovsk and reach closer towards the city of Pokrovsk, the only city, the big city that they're actually threatening right now, but even Ukrainians are able to push back. Moreover, do you know Toretsk? Like, remember the city of Toretsk, which is located right over here? It was a nasty city. So on the 7th of February, and I will show you this is a Wikipedia article. So on Wikipedia there are people that are tracking the battle for different cities or areas within Ukraine within this war. So they have been tracking this fight for Toretsk. And if you remember, like, after Russian Ministry of Defense stated that there was a fight for Toretsk and Toretsk was actually captured, the guys, for example, in this Wikipedia article, they instantly stated, well, 7th of February is the end of Battle of Toretsk. Now it's a deal. Russia controls the city of Toretsk. Well, if you go to the current version of the page, well, suddenly you don't see that. Do you want to know why? Well, because Russians are not having a good time. Russians are actually having pretty bad time, because as Ukrainians decided, was like, well, if you're attacking us forward, we're just gonna try to undercut you. Now, this map shows a little bit more optimistic than it is in reality. People from the ground are reporting that things are a lot harder. But let's just be very clear. Russia is not having a good time in the city of Toretsk. Nothing is over. Despite the fact that the Russian Ministry of Defense said something, imagine that they lied. So Ukrainians are pushing back on Russians. And again, we are still in a situation where Russia has more resources than Ukraine. Ukraine really needs that increase from the European Union and allies, and really needs an increase in additional defense spending. But more importantly, we have had this stalemate situation, unfortunately, between Russia and Ukraine, and a lot of people are perceiving that this is like two equal parties fighting, whereas they're not. Russia is many times more, and only because they are so shit, they cannot really achieve their goals. They're barely crawling forward. If you look, for example, at the situation right now with the attacks and captured territory, so the blue line is the territory captured by Russia and the red one is the number of attacks. You see that actually since November last year, Russia pretty much culminated And they have been going downhill like a big sled, just going downhill with the number of their advances and ability to capture territory. This is of course because of the supplies of the weapons from the United States and because Ukrainians have fixed a lot of their issues within internal command. So no, supply of weapons and supplying Ukraine with help works. That's why I'm stating that if Ukraine is gonna get 22.33 billion from the European allies and other allies, maybe we shouldn't dismiss Canada and other countries, if they will be able to deliver more and actually secure that and increase investments into Ukrainian production itself, then I mean, Russia already is pretty low on their supplies of equipment from the Soviet stockpiles. Where is exactly Russia going to take the resources that it needed to try to fight Ukrainians as they did in the last 2 years? And Ukraine is not stopping. Ukraine is not stopping at all. Already now there are statements that they want to expand the drone production to over 2,000 drones per month to strike Russia. Long-range drones. We also see that Ukrainian drones are becoming even more capable. They were able to strike a oil refinery which was over 1,400 kilometers from Ukraine. Insane amounts for a drone, and it's gonna get only worse and worse and worse for Russia. So the simple message that I have for Russians, that despite whatever is happening between the United States and Ukraine, Russia should not really ease up, because war is not going anywhere for you. And Ukraine is only growing their capabilities because they didn't have the stockpiles, and the only way for them to resist you was to grow their capabilities from nothing. And now your capabilities are running low. It will only get worse and worse and worse. And most importantly, we're talking about potentially US lifting sanctions and so on. It's not gonna help, because the biggest sanctions for Russia is actually the defense expenditure. Until Russia stops this war, there is no real sanctions that can be lifted and any kind of stabilization of the economy that can happen, because the intensity of the war is just too high, and Ukraine is not going to let the intensity go down. So Russia are forced to spend stupidly large amounts to sustain this war. War itself is the worst situation for Russia to be in. That is first and foremost what is killing the Russian economy, not the sanctions. Sanctions are helping, speeding it up, but not the main driver of it. And then to round it up with some nice news, guys, I want to say a huge thank you. This is a picture that has been posted by General Zaluzhny, and he has been posting all of these messages that people have been sending to him and other representatives of Ukraine, messages of support, comments of support. And I want to say huge thanks to everyone that took their time. It's something that every Ukrainian need. It's something that is absolutely necessary for every Ukrainian to see that you're supporting them. But we are here supporting not only with kind words, though I do acknowledge the contributions and it's super important, but most importantly, we are doing it with our fundraiser. Guys, if you have some disposable income, now is the time to help Ukraine. While the situation with Trump is getting, Ukraine needs as much help as we all can provide. Please participate in fundraiser right now. We are nearly done. Huge fundraiser of 250,000. We are over 220,000, so we're like last 30,000 left. It's a finish line. So help us and everyone to cross this finish line. Let's support Ukraine. Let's get these vehicles that will help save more lives. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I will see you next time.